That is Bruce Springsteen, born in the USA. President Trump and the First Lady Melania Trump are in London at the start of their state visit to the United Kingdom, with some of their family members joining them. And the government has pulled out all the stops for the president. A state visit is a big deal, and not every head of state actually gets one. Do you think the government was right to honour President Trump with this lavish state visit, including the massive banquet that will be taking place tonight at Buckingham Palace? 03030 80 55 55. We're taking your calls right now. Tell us if you're cheering along President Trump on this visit and why. And tell us if you are minded to support, even in your mind, in your heart, the protesters who are very angry about the state visit that's taking place. 81771 for your text. And we're on Twitter at BBC Talkback. We're joined by the People Before Profit councillor Fiona Ferguson and Errol Murkoch, who's the chief strategist for Republicans overseas. Good afternoon. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Errol, I'll come to you first. I bet you were singing along with Bruce Springsteen there a moment ago.
You know it.
What is the importance of a visit like this for an American president?
Well, it's amazing. I'm right here at Buckingham Palace. Marine One just flew over. We're so excited. Today is an important day for the special relationship between our two nations to reinforce the commitment to each other's prosperity. Donald Trump is coming to the UK with a clear and present message that nationalism does not mean isolation. And I think that's a very impactful message right now, considering the turbulence of UK politics and the anniversary of D-Day. I'm sorry that Marine One going over us right now live, which is kind of taking the sound away.
It's fine. We can hear you just fine, and I've got live pictures as well. Marine One is just descending with the president into the grounds. Go ahead, Errol.
Exactly, and it's a huge day for us. There's a lot of consternation around who's he going to meet and whatnot. Well, Trump already got the state visit. What a bunch of PC malcontents choose to do or not to do in their parliament or in the street is not our concern. Nobody showed up for a photo op with MPs Americans have never heard of. They came for the Queen. The Queen invited him, and this is a great chance for our two nations, which are on the cusp of a pretty large political change worldwide, to reinforce that stability. So we're so over the moon and tremendously honored to be here.
And some people were concerned about the president's tweeting and whether he would be tweeting during this visit. Obviously, Donald Trump has already broken convention. He's a president who knows his own mind. He says what he thinks. Not too worried about conventions, diplomatic conventions and other conventions, one of which was you don't really comment on the politics of the host country. But he's already done so by giving his views on Brexit and no-deal Brexit, and on the Tory leadership candidates appearing to support the candidacy of Boris Johnson, and even suggesting that Nigel Farage, the Brexit Party leader, should be brought into the negotiations on Brexit. Then this morning, just as he was landing at Stansted, President Trump tweeted a kind of counterpunch against the mayor of London, who said some very critical things recently about this visit and about Donald Trump. And he said, Mayor Khan reminds me very much of our very dumb and incompetent mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, who has also done a terrible job, only half his height, he says. In any event, I look forward to being a great friend to the United Kingdom, and I'm looking forward very much to my visit landing now, he says. 81771 for your text. Fiona, what do you make of this visit?
Yeah, I suppose I'm going from the point of one of the PC malcontents that Earl referred to, and I don't think it'll be surprising for any people listening that I don't think it's a good idea that Donald Trump has been ruled out the red carpet. I think we're well aware by now that he is a dangerously erratic man whose policies threaten women, Muslims, migrants and other minorities right across the world, and whose presidency, not even complete yet, has been shrouded in corruption scandal, in financial scandal, and calls for his impeachment increase every day, including today where there are more calls. And as you say, he spent the first few hours of his visit watching CNN, attacking journalists and calling the Mayor of London a stone cold loser. This isn't a guy that deserves our respect or millions of pounds in a state-funded visit. It's someone who should be condemned by the people who are running this place.
I'll just bring in that other part of the quote from the tweet today about Sadiq Khan. President Trump says, who by all accounts has done a terrible job as Mayor of London, has been foolishly nasty to the visiting President of the United States, by far the most important ally of the United Kingdom. He is a stone-cold loser who should focus on crime in London, not on me. Errol, was that a misjudged tweet this morning?
Absolutely not. Sadiq Khan is a minor league player on the world stage and forgets his place. Contrast this unprofessional and petty local politicking with the reception President Trump will receive and has received in France, and the contrast is clear and present that Mayor Khan decided to make a state visit about his own ego. With that said, President Trump doesn't back down from anybody. The petty little mayor of London is no exception. We stand by that statement. I mean, this is a mayor talking about a state visit. He's out of line, and it's unprofessional, and it's not needed.
Elizabeth is in Helens Bay. How do you see it, Elizabeth? Welcome.
Welcome, William. To your previous lady speaker there talking to Mr. Trump, at least this man has the courage of his convictions to say it as it is. We have politicians everywhere who don't even know the meaning of truth. We're in big, big problems in England because one's against the other and the other. This man has not committed any kind of crime that Mr. Blair has caused or President Bush has caused. And neither of these two people, William, have ever answered for taking us to war. This man Trump is not about war. I watched him say, and I think he's all about peace. And we should give him a chance. He is the President of America. He is going to help Britain when we're no longer in the EU, hopefully.
Can I come back to your point about Blair and Bush? Because I do agree. I do agree with that part. I would see them both dragged before the Hague if it was up to me. I'm not sure if you agree quite that far, but that's as far as I would go. I've protested both Bush and Trump and
but
both of the Clintons.
I've never seen anybody bring Mr. Blair to court. I have
quite agree with you, and he should be.
The man here in England that's standing for Prime Minister being taken to court for next to nothing.
Could I ask, you say that Trump stands up for his he has courage in his own convictions.
Yes.
Do you support his the conviction when he decided to lock Mexican children in cages along the border to stay there?
You're taking this a little bit far. Mexico is a different country from America.
Yes, but the Mexican children are in cages in America.
We don't know what comes across that border. Murders anybody from another country coming through Mexico into America. It's not just Mexican, and it's not just Mexican people.
Elizabeth, thank you very much. That sound was the series of gun salutes that are now taking place. The Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall have just greeted President Trump as he exited from Marine One with his wife Melania Trump, and they're now walking across the lawn to the steps leading into Buckingham Palace. Tony's in West Belfast. How do you see this visit, Tony?
From my point of view, I would certainly be 100% behind the protest. To me, it's a protest not just against Trump, but against what he represents. And those are things which are already being touched upon by in relation to bigotry, racism, misogyny, the attacks on the LGBT community, his attitude towards climate, withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accord. And also the threat of war with Iran as well. But can I specifically ask the question of your, I'm sorry I can't recall his name, a person who supports Trump?
Errol Moorcoach from Republicans Overseas.
I was just watching the programme there in relation to an interview with Jared Kushner. Now, in terms of the accusation that you level against Trump regarding racism, what is your opinion? What do you think about birtherism when Trump trumpeted the position that there was a possibility that Obama wasn't actually American? To me, that was out-and-out racism. Now, here's the thing. When Kushner was asked that question, 3 times he was asked the question, and 3 times he refused to answer the question, was it right or wrong for Trump to raise that as an issue.
Okay, Tony, I'll put that question to Errol. I don't think he could hear it because the gun salutes are continuing. But Errol, the question was whether you believe Donald Trump descended into a kind of racism with his birtherism about President Obama, suggesting that he wasn't even an American.
No, I don't think it was racism. And I'm an immigrant to the United States from Turkey, from a Muslim nation. My entire family is an immigrant family. We saw it as a valid question, and it was one that eventually got a little bit overblown. Granted, there's obvious oligarchy, he had to be controversial. And running a campaign is much different than governance. And you look at the way he's governing, I don't see any racism there as an immigrant from a Muslim country.
Fiona, no matter what you think about Donald Trump's domestic policies, he is the head of state and the head of government of Britain's greatest ally, the United States. And it's always been the convention in these state visits, surely, that it's that office and that relationship that you're honouring, rather than whoever happens to be the current incumbent in it, surely.
Well, I mean, I think it's exactly because he is in this office that people are coming out to protest. What does this visit say to women who are victims of sexual assault, given the comments that Trump has made before about women and about sexual assault? This is a man whose racist rhetoric led us to the Muslim ban, which, Earl, was a racist policy while Trump was elected. He's bolstered the far right globally. His policies target minorities, and his attempt to roll back reproductive rights and childcare rights stem from the kind of sexism and misogyny that we saw before he was elected. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that the office deserves respect, because the man who's holding it shows absolutely no respect for the majority of minorities right across the world. And I think that history will look back unkindly on those who stood by unprincipled and allowed and rolled out the red carpet for this man whose policies, whose politics, whose rhetoric are so very dangerous for minorities right across the world, and who are driving us, if he gets this way, head first closer to the destruction of this planet.
And let me ask, because some people are asking whether you would take the same view of the state visit for President Xi of China.
Yeah, I mean, we get this every single time that we're on to speak about Trump. It's, would you roll out the red carpet for Clinton or Bush or China or anybody else? I think we have to look at Trump in isolation at the moment. Listen, I criticise what's going on in China at the minute in terms of its treatment of Muslims. I think it's an absolute disgrace, and I think that if any state visit was to pay millions of pounds to roll out the red carpet for someone who oversees that should be protested. I mean, it's not just about Trump. It's about the far right rhetoric, populist views that he holds, that he puts into practice in the office. I don't care what he looks like. I don't care what his name is. I don't care really who he is. He's doing these things, and he needs to be protested.
Incidentally, I think one of our callers said earlier that the Queen had invited Donald Trump. It's actually the government who invited Donald Trump. The Queen has her role, of course, in a state visit, but the government determines who gets a state visit. And the Queen sometimes in the past has had difficult encounters on state visits, not least with the Romanian Ceausescu's when they visited, and apparently at the time she tried to avoid them so much she hid behind the hedges in Buckingham Palace so that she wouldn't have to encounter them on a walk. Dan is in Lisbon. Hello, Dan.
Hi, William. William, who can remember the Chinese secret? Who can forget? Sorry, I beg your pardon. Who can forget the Chinese Secret Service lining Gordon Brown upside number 10 for a photo opportunity for the Chinese Olympics? I mean, what did I tell you?
I'd forgotten it.
What?
I had forgotten it.
Very conveniently, William.
No, I literally forgot it. Tell me more. Tell me more.
I think this sum actually is worth every penny that we're going to spend, because if we can get a trade deal with our biggest customer, which is America, and it basically has, and a trade with America could be the answer as to why we have had what your BBC correspondent John Thompson called a British jobs miracle. It's because we do so much trade in America, and America has boosted Trump has boosted the American economy.
All right.
But I would just like to say, in the past 40 years, we have invested £360 billion net in the European Union. And now, with the said delay, we end up with a bill of £39 billion net of the assets that we own in the European Union.
Okay, Dan, I've got to move, but I know you're getting into the European Union debate, but I want to stick with Donald Trump. But thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that. And you've taken us to an interesting question about trade. Errol, can you hear me okay with all those guns firing?
Yeah, I guess.
Just about. Let me ask about trade, because Nancy Pelosi was on a visit to Belfast not so very long ago, and she repeatedly made the point that Donald Trump does not get to decide if there's a trade deal between the United States and the United Kingdom after Brexit. That will be an issue for a congressional sign-off, and she said there will be no congressional support for such a deal unless the threat of a hard border in Ireland is removed. So the question for you, Errol, is Donald Trump does not embody the possibility of a trade deal, does he?
Well, Nancy Pelosi is pretending that she can dictate the terms of Brexit, which is much more of an overstep than anything Trump has done. I totally reject her concept. It's ineffectual congressional legislature, and bilateral deals are bilateral deals. When you just look at the numbers, the UK is the second largest source of foreign direct investment in the US. It's the largest source, and the second largest source of direct investment in the UK is the United States. We're talking cars, 7.5 billion, 6.6 billion in medical and pharmaceutical products, and 2.6 billion in refined oil. Those are jobs. Those are pensions. Those are people's lives. Those are children going to school. And it's much bigger than Nancy Pelosi doing the same thing as Sadiq Khan and trying to get her moment in the sun. I mean, we're about to really build a bunch of bilateral agreements. Brexit is around the corner. Nigel took over the EU. Boris Johnson is going to be the next PM. So we're here to deal with the winners, and Nancy Pelosi is not even on the winning team in her own country. So
Errol, let me just compliment you, by the way, just because you're doing very well answering these questions with that firing range beside you, all the gunshots we're hearing in the background, but you're doing very well. Fiona.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to disagree on how well you're doing, considering you just said that Nancy Pelosi, you suggested, and I'm not a big fan of hers either, but you suggested that she doesn't want to see trade between the UK and the US. That's not what she's saying. What she did say, what William told you she said, is that Donald Trump cannot unilaterally decide for or against a trade deal with the UK, and thank God. This is a man whose economic policies can be described as protectionism, who consistently, before and after he was elected, said America first, whose erratic approach to trade so far has seen Bombardier here in the north of Ireland. I'm not sure if you know much about that situation, but it saw thousands of jobs threatened here in the north of Ireland, and so I think that you talk about winners and losers all you want. The losers, when it comes to Trump's trade deals, are the ordinary workers. That seems to be how it plays out to me. He wanted to take away their employment rights. He's tried to roll those back. He's tried to take away their healthcare coverage. And as I say, his erratic approach to trade deals has already seen workers here lose out.
I think that might be a 61-gun salute rather than simply a 21-gun salute. Errol, you want to come back in?
Yeah, in regard to the economy, the U.S. economy is at record highs. Unemployment has fallen to 3.6%, the lowest since December '69. We're talking 500,000 jobs added in manufacturing, 260,000 jobs in April alone, beating estimates by over 100,000. Dow Jones, over 25,000 more job openings and workers able to fill them, which means it's giving workers choice. Stopping illegal immigration was the number one thing suppressing wages of lower-income Americans, working-class people, Hispanics, African Americans. All of those things are at record lows. So the idea that he's not for the worker, 8 of the 10 richest counties in America voted for Hillary Clinton. Donald Trump is the working man's president. Whether or not he's a blue-collar billionaire, that might be just more for the media. But the fact of the matter is, the global trade war that Donald Trump has started to defend American interest is to defend the fact that in the current economy, I mean, we had 70,000 opioid deaths last year. We have 1 out of 5 students in California State University who are homeless. We have serious problems at home. So that America First policy, that was a policy for all Americans. And they have patriotism in your heart. There's no room for prejudice. So the idea that Donald Trump is somehow removing jobs is actually quite the antithesis of that. And more importantly, the renegotiated deal with Mexico, the new NAFTA deal, that's increasing wages on the border by 16% for Mexican auto workers. So all around the board, working class people have more money in their pockets than they had before. The rise in prices was only 1.9%, meaning real gains in the paychecks of average Americans, tax cuts for every American, people having opportunity for entrepreneurial
But
exploit.
actually, haven't most of those stats already been torn apart by any sort of basic investigative journalism in America? Yes, they
absolutely
have.
have not.
Yes, they have. And
No,
what they have,
no,
what
they
we've
have not.
actually seen is that the kind of jobs that Americans are in are low-paid, underpaid jobs
No.
that people cannot
That's
afford to
cosmopolitan
Sorry,
error.
I let you
But
finish.
even
so
if,
please let me
even if
finish.
that's true, Fiona, what's it got to do with a state visit and whether it should happen?
Well, actually, I
Those are
didn't.
domestic issues for the United States, aren't
But
they?
actually, I didn't make it about domestic issues. The point that I made was that his erratic approach to trade deals has been bad for workers here. It was Earl who made it about domestic policies. But ask any working class American how their life is on their basic wage, and I'll think that they'll disagree with your
All right.
nice rosy picture.
Let me
that
go
you
back to the
painted.
calls. I want to get some of these texts in as well. Some interesting texts here. 81771. Tricia in Lawrence says he is the president. Full stop. Another text unnamed says stone cold loser. LOL. Love it. No matter what your views are, respect costs nothing in this text. James in Enniskillen says, hello, William and the team. Good old BBC. If this had been in President Obama's time, the cost would not even have been discussed. President Trump is the elected head of the United States of America. Get over it. Welcome to the United Kingdom. God save the Queen, from James in Enniskillen. I think we did actually report on the costs of the Obama state visit, to be fair. Fra is in North Belfast. Hello, Fra.
Good afternoon, William. Good afternoon, Fiona. William,
Hi, Brian.
I was phoning up just to make the point that I think it's important on this occasion to separate out the office of the President of America from Donald Trump, his personality issues and his foreign policy. He has been invited because it's the 75th anniversary of the D-Day landings. That, I assume, is the reason why he's been invited and given a state visit. And he's also going to go off to France. Now, having said that, I totally disagree with American foreign policy, with what's happening in Venezuela, Syria, Cuba, Iran, China, to name just 5 of the kind of open battles that he's involved in now, politically, if not necessarily militarily, although that might change going forward. And I believe there are protests planned in his visit in Ireland on Wednesday. Once I get the full details of them, which may be at the American Embassy, I fully intend to protest. So I'm just saying I can make the distinction between the office of President being invited for the 75th anniversary of the D-Day landings and his foreign policies, which I will be protesting in Dublin or possibly Cork on Wednesday.
All right, Fra, thank you very much. And yes, the President will be visiting and staying at Dunbeg, which is his golf resort. I think he'll be seeing Leo Varadkar for a short bilateral meeting at the airport and then travelling to his golf resort there. Jim is in Belfast. Hello, Jim.
Good afternoon, William. William, you have to split. I don't like the President of the United States. That's my personal opinion. But he represents the American people. And I think it's an embarrassment to the Queen, all these people protesting. Because how would they like it if the Queen went on a foreign visit and she got booed and everything else the way they're doing to this man? Now, one other thing nobody has mentioned today, okay, it's the 70th anniversary, yes, but we should be very, very thankful to the Americans because when they came into the war, there was an agreement with Churchill and the then President of the United States for the war effort. Now, the war effort, they supplied planes and everything else, and we made the last payment to the American government for what we owned. I think it was 4 years ago. But a lot of the protesters don't seem to realise that. If they hadn't come into the war, we wouldn't have had the freedom we have today.
It was absolutely a decisive intervention, Jim. You're quite right historically on that.
Yes.
Is that enough for you to defend this state visit?
But what I'm saying is, a lot of people who are out protesting don't realise that we paid all the money back to the American government that we owed them.
Well, they might realise that, but I'm asking you if you think that historical connection with D-Day and the alliance in the Second World War is the basic justification for this visit.
It is, yes. It is, but a lot of people, well, to be quite honest, I don't want to insult anybody, but are these people not jobs to go to instead of out in the street protesting?
All right, Jim, thank you very much. Maybe some of them took the day off because they feel so strongly about it. Brian in Lambeg, hello.
Hi, William. First of all, can I just say that one of the main reasons America came into the Second World War is because of Japan and being attacked attacked in Hawaii. So
Yeah,
America,
Pearl Harbor.
if Pearl Harbor hadn't happened, America would have stood on its hands for a hell of a lot longer. So let's not make out America as the knight in shining armor. But that said, a lot of people are saying, oh, well, let's respect the office of the President of the United States. Well, I have a simple scenario we can do here, and it'll satisfy everybody. Once Donald Trump shows respect to the office of the United States President, then everyone else should. Because the man is a liar, he's a thief, he's a sexual predator. He does everything.
All right, Brian, I'm
He's a bully as well. He's an economic bully as well.
I can tell that you're not a fan, though obviously he denies the allegations that you have made. Many others have made similar allegations. He's denied them. David is there in North Belfast. Hello, David.
Hello. I just want to count back on your man saying Donald Trump's a sexual predator. He's a sexual predator because he supposedly made comments about women in the privacy of his own home with men. Since that happened, there's been plenty of women have said to me what he said. You want to hear what we say about men when we were sitting in the house having a drink or at a hen party, which is far worse than what Donald Trump said.
So that tape, none of that worries you about Donald Trump?
It doesn't, and look, that does, because women say far worse and do far worse, right? But we'll get back to about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is doing what our politicians should be doing. He's looking after his own country. What you got to do with Donald Trump if we lost jobs here? He's not here to worry about many jobs here. He's looking after his own country. And by the way, see when Barack Obama was in office, he was going to do all sorts of things for black people. Well, he done nothing. Since Donald Trump's been in, there's more black women and men in work than there ever was under Barack Obama. Far more.
David, thank you very much. And people do want to emphasize the fact that Donald Trump is not the first president who intervened on a British political question, in this case with Brexit, because of course Barack Obama, you'll remember, before the Brexit or during the Brexit campaign, visited the UK and said that if Brexit happened, Britain would essentially have to go to the end of the queue, the end of the line, as they say in America, when it comes to a trade deal. Fiona?
Yeah, just on the point that Donald Trump hasn't sexually assaulted women and that he said something about women in the privacy of his own home, that's not true. He admitted, while mic'd up with a documentary crew, that he himself grabs women wherever he wants, whenever he wants, and that he believes he can do it because of who he is. That's the definition of sexual assault. So let's not play games here. But I do want to come back, because it's an interesting point that the last caller made, that there's all of this political niceness about we have to respect the office of the president. At what cost? This is someone who uses the office of the president to victimize women, to lock kids in cages, to, make international trade and war calls without even asking anybody else in the world, never mind in his cabinet. This is someone who is using the office of the president to damage the lives and the livelihoods of people globally and embolden the far right. So why should we show this man respect, is my thing. M. Curry's a winner. Since when was that a decent excuse for anybody to do anything?
Well,
and we could come back to the fact that he didn't
Palace
win the
is showing him a
popular
lot
vote.
of respect right now. He's Donald Trump is inspecting the guard at Buckingham Palace, and there are some protesters. We don't know the actual number, but it's expected that people have been bussed in the many thousands, perhaps tens of thousands, into London. So there may be some protesters out there in various places, Fiona. But you've just seen the president being brought from Stansted Airport by Marine One, landing inside the grounds of Buckingham Palace. The ceremonies are continuing right now. He's seeing none of the protests. It's pointless, isn't it?
No, not at all. You'll remember, because I was on your show, I hope you remember, maybe you don't, last year when he threatened to come to Ireland, that one of the reasons that he himself said he cancelled the trip was because morons were going to protest in the street. Listen, if it keeps him away, I'll keep on the streets, and I know there'll be people on the streets of Belfast tomorrow evening.
Errol, do you think the president will be perturbed in any way by protesters?
Absolutely not. I mean, if this was the first weeks or first month, we kind of gave everybody a pass, we understand. But it's 2.5 years in. I mean, this goes anywhere he goes in Western civilization. You get sort of the people dancing in the streets, unemployed, buying milkshakes. Look, I went to UC Berkeley. I went out there and protested too because I had nothing to do. But if Donald Trump, the U.S. government, the U.S. people, we just laugh. When we see that balloon, it's comedy to us. This doesn't matter. We're here to meet the Queen. We're here to meet the people who are about to run this country. So the people in the streets, good luck to them. Enjoy your day. It's wonderful weather, but that's not our concern.
Have you seen the baby Trump blimp?
Yeah, I'm disappointed that it's so small. too. That one was pretty good. I don't discredit the artistic abilities. It's all in good fun. But as far as, do you think the president is sitting in his office stewing and angry? No, that's just the sort of leftist fan fiction they tell themselves so they go to sleep at night.
But he is, isn't he, though? He is in his office. He was on Our First One. He was in Room 1 stewing with anger at journalists on CNN. He likes to give us about this impression that he's not annoyed by anything, but actually he gets pretty annoyed pretty constantly, and we see it on Twitter. Here's my final message on this. What message does this send out to the kids on the streets who are trying to protest for climate change? What message does it send out to victims of sexual assault? What message does it send out to Muslims right across the world, to immigrants right across the world? This sends out the message that we are A-OK with Donald Trump's policies, and we're fine with him just because of who he is and what office he's into. I don't truck with that kind of behaviour.
Fiona Ferguson, thanks very much. Thanks to Earl Murkoch, who's the chief strategist for Republicans overseas, joining us there in a very noisy grounds of Buckingham Palace, where they've had the 61-gun salute. I think it is 61-gun salute. And now President Trump continues with the welcoming ceremony as he inspects the guard. And then we'll be having tea and lunch in Buckingham Palace, of course, ahead of the great, very grand, lavish state banquet tonight. There'll be full coverage, of course, across all of our platforms on the BBC throughout the week with this presidential visit. But we have to move on. 03030 80 55 55. Next question for you: should we shut